Spring fishing season is just around the corner, and Border Sporting Goods is your fishing headquarters for rods and reels from G. Loomis, St. Croix, Fenwick, Lewes, Daiwa, Shimano, and Abu Garcia. No matter what species of fish you are targeting, Borders has the perfect setup to make your next trip on the water a success. Borders has baits in every style and size with a wide selection of tackle from Berkley, Strike King, Zoom, Z-Man, Bandit, and many more. Before hitting the water for your next fishing trip, stop by and stock up at Border Sporting Goods, US 60 West in Ashland.
And welcome into Casting with the Coaches. I'm James Collier. He's Evan Ferguson. We're on location tonight. We're at Border Sporting Goods here in Ashland, Kentucky, and this is something we've been talking about a little bit of, one, getting out to the store and doing a show here, but more importantly, we got a really good show on tap tonight. We're going to do a lot of lines. You see all these lines here in front of you. We're going to test all these lines out here tonight and figure out which line is the best.
I mean, I'll be honest, I've enjoyed doing it so far, but this is something that I'm excited to dive in and be a little mad scientist here and see what actually is the best line. It's a really in-depth test we got lined up coming for you guys. It's really going to break things down in more than just what breaks at the certain poundage. We're going to really look into some different things, and it should be, hopefully it's eye-opening, and we'll see what wins.
And to put this disclaimer out there, we are not sponsored by any of these line companies, so we are doing a straight across the board fair test with all the manufacturers that we have here at Border Sporting Goods between monofilament, braided line, and fluorocarbon. You can see we've got a large collection of fluorocarbon over here. And then the last part we're going to do, we've got our R2 brands here. So I'm big on P-Line Fluoro Clear. I love this stuff. Evan, you remember Yin and Yang, right? He's on monofilament Bass Pro Excel. So we're going to put our two lines to the test and see how they work out. But that's what we've got going on here tonight. So the first thing we did is I've taken all of the lines and I've broken this down. You'll see this on your screen to where we looked at the diameter that the line says that it's supposed to be. And then I actually measured it with a caliper and measured 4 different places on the spool. And started at the beginning of the spool. These are all brand new spools, by the way. Started at the beginning of the spool, and about every 10 yards, did a different measurement. And then I've taken the 4 measurements that I got, averaged those together. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a power index. So we're going to take that number and then the poundage that it makes the line break, and we're going to divide those two numbers together, and that's going to make that power index. And then the last part we're going to do an abrasion test and put all of that together, and then we'll make a winner of which one works out best.
Yeah, and then you're still going to have your own personal feel you may like, but you went through a lot of detailed work on measuring this stuff. I mean, we'll show you some more clips of this, but it's really unique. You found some interesting things with that, with measuring it, that I didn't know was that common. So,
and I'll be honest with you, I did not know it either until I started researching some of this and started looking into it. And I'm a math guy, so I love numbers, and so I started digging into the numbers. And we're talking about measurements out to 4 decimal places of an inch. I mean, we're getting way out there to the 10,000th place. I want to convert all that over to millimeters because that's what your spools are going to be labeled as well. So I'll make it to where what the spool shows and what my measurement showed from there, and we'll go from that. But it's something when you look at it, Coach, and we've got them broken up into the different categories. Every category has its own unique purpose. Again, fluorocarbon, you don't want that for top water. Jerk bait, crankbaits, yeah, you want that fluorocarbon because it's going to sink. Likewise, you want that top water, that bite, get that monofilament. And then, of course, your braided line, it's got its own element in itself. Yeah,
I mean, some people use braid for top water, but around grass, that braid should really win this whole break test, at least we assume. But, I don't want to assume too much before we get started. But, they all have their own place. A lot of people kind of went just to this braid and fluorocarbon and just mixing that mono. So, we try to give samples of kind of the most popular things here, and we're excited to kind of get into this test and get started.
Okay.
And we're on.
All right, hang on. Okay, I've got weight.
It's full weight. How much is it showing?
5 pounds, 3 ounces.
Okay. That's the extra ounce of the clips.
Yes, with the clips. So 5 pounds, 3 ounces. So 5 pounds.
We'll change that towards, there it is. All right.
Ah,
That's pretty accurate around.
it showed 11.6 on the scale when it popped.
Okay. So
That was the
P-line.
black line. Line number 2, this is the Stren monofilament. Don't you hook up?
All right. Going 5 pounds first.
Okay, scale 0.
We're on.
5 pounds, 2 ounces.
All right. We're good.
613 is what it showed when it popped.
Well, I think it obviously was over that because it
Yeah.
just held 7.5.
Yeah, and but that was where it was showing on the thing when it did pop. Now you also have to take into account stress test. You know, that was the third time that it had been stretched.
Yeah.
Did that weigh it down or whatever? But it did stop at the 12.5. P-line. This is the green moss, the one that's got the dye injected into it. So we'll see how this one holds up here. Again, this is all monofilament.
Start with number 5.
Okay. Scale is 0.
All right.
5 pounds, 2 ounces. I feel like I'm one of those guys on Major League Fishing.
Yeah. Yes.
Can we reweigh it?
Yeah, that's exactly how this feels. Now, one thing that you'll see, and we're going to try to gauge by me taking weight off on these tests, is we only have 2.5 pound increments. Yep. We don't have smaller than that. So there's an argument that we're not going to have that fine measurement that actually makes the difference here.
We're close enough for government work.
Yeah. All right, here comes 15.
All right, it was at 13 when it popped.
I had 13. Okay, I was holding a lot of.
Yeah, it was 13 on the weight when it popped, though. All right, so next up we got Trilene Extra Tough. There we go. Scale 0.
All right, there's 5 pounds coming on.
5 pounds,
2 ounces. If we have to, I've got 45 pound weights out in the truck. So.
I think the only thing we'll have to do is that well rope that you fish with.
Hey, that's why I use it. All right, here comes a 15.
15 total.
See if it's the first successor.
All right, here we go. 13.12.
That was holding on for a while.
13.12, and it held there. Yeah, it did. That was when it popped. So 13.12 on that.
All right, so we're back to this P-line test right now with the braid. We've had to do some alterations to get it to work. So we're going to start at 10 pound. It is 20 pound braid, so we're going to see where we're at. We'll load up and see where we're at.
That says 8 pounds, 15 ounces.
Okay, well that's about a pound less then. I wonder if it has something to do with the braid taking away the weight. All right, now we're going to what it should hold.
20 pounds.
I swear I never cut any tag in this time either.
Huh. Yeah, you did not cut any tag line. That's right.
Ready? 20 pound?
20 pounds. 17.8. And it did not break the knot this time. This time it broke at the line. It is a clean break. All right, on to our next braided line. This is the Seaguar Smackdown braid. High green. So we're going to start
10 pounds.
10 pounds.
Again, 20-pound test. So see how this goes. 10 pound, good.
10 even. So we're going to 20 pounds now?
20 pound.
All right.
What it's actually rated for.
All right, here we go.
Come on.
Scale's good. £19, 9 ounces.
All right.
$24.12.
24.12.
So definitely very impressive. All right, last one of the braids up is the Power Pro Super 8 Slick V2. Gavin, you said you've used this stuff, so we'll,
it has worked for well. I mean, I'm still a little shocked how the P-line went, but it's done good on the mono.
Now, I want to ask you one question. When you cut this, how did it cut differently than the Smackdown?
This is actually one of the things I had a problem with. And I'd forgotten because I kind of switched. It does not, unless you have like perfectly sharp braided scissors or something, it kind of chewed.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Did like a straight
the
cut.
P-line one did ground very quick cuts. I had to go this, what was the other one? The Seaguar?
Seaguar.
Yeah, that one was harder to get through. But this one, it would cut, but it also kind of like tear and thread apart. So, as you can see, I left a big tag in because I don't want the slippage to be an issue like it was earlier. So, we'll see how this goes.
All right, so we'll start at 10 pounds.
All right. Yep, I'll grab this. Thank you for scooting back here. All right.
Once you hook up, I'll zero the scale. That scale's ready.
All right, 10 pound. Mr. Tall Guy.
9 pounds, 12 ounces. 13 ounces. There we go.
All right. All right, 20 pound.
All right. Scale is 0. $18.7. And it just broke.
And that broke, wow, look where it broke at too. Now, this is something I just talked about. That's what I want to show you on camera. See how this, it broke? I don't know if you can tell. You can't tell. I mean,
you can a little bit. Here, let me kind of stand behind it. Put it there maybe on the contrast of my shirt or something.
Yeah, I can kind of, well, my gray's not going to help. You get up here. But see if you can explain to the people about what's going on there.
So if you can notice here, let me get this scale out of the way here. That'll help a little bit too. This is a very interesting thing. So you can see the line. This is all good line. And then it gets to this point right here, and you can see where it's chewed up, and it's got into one fiber that's all left. And this thing is just frayed loose. This is almost what you would expect to see on an abrasion test. But it's the fibers have come loose, and there's one fiber left there hanging. There, I just popped that loose. That's what that did. So 17.8 was the number I believe that we had.
I'll write that down. That was on the 20 pound test. It's a 20 pound line, so it failed really close. You know, it failed at 20 pound. It made it at 17.5. But again, that's exactly the way I've always had a problem with it cutting. When it goes to break, it really pops the threads loose like that.
You ready?
Yep.
All right, off to the fluorocarbons we go now. We'll start first with the original Berkeley 100% fluorocarbon. Back to 10 pound test line. We're back to using the standard fisherman knot on the loops, keeping the tags. We're not using short tags, so we make sure we don't have any slippage from there. So we're going to start with 5 pounds.
Be interested to see how this does after the abrasion test.
5 pounds, 1 ounce.
All right, very good. Oh, I don't like it.
8.3. The interesting thing, we kind of both said, oh, the line made a sound. You heard it almost like a guitar string when it plucked, and it did not. Yeah, it looks like it got it just below the knot. So it did not break at the knot. It was just below the knot, but it was a clean break right below the knot on that one. So 8.3 was the weight on that one there. up next we got Suffolk's 100% fluorocarbon. This is the Advance. So we'll start first with the 5 pound weight.
5 pound. Are you ready?
Here we go.
What?
5 pounds exactly. 5. Scale is good.
Again, I want to say we don't get to go with a pound by pound, so that's why he's using the scale to watch and see what he can, if he can eyeball something to help you guys out.
11.7.
I set that up perfectly while you're watching.
Yeah.
I'm just holding it, letting it go.
Hold on to it. All right, up next, we got Super FC Sniper. Keep a close eye on this guy. Make sure he doesn't cheat the scales and stuff. This is the one he likes. This is Sunline. And Coach, you've used this a lot, so you said this is something you really have a lot of confidence in.
It got me back into using fluorocarbon lines. I'll say that much. I think they're obviously a great line, but I kind of lost a lot of confidence. But I said, I'm going to go get the best of the best in quotations there. I'm not saying it necessarily is, but I really believe in it. So
right,
I'm probably about to eat crow with this. All right, here comes the 5 pound.
Scale is ready. Pounds, 13 ounces.
Get it off there quick.
Notice that was the lightest of the 5 pounders we had too, by the way.
That's an extra 5 I got. All right. 12 and a half. At least
good.
Should be 12 and a half.
8.6. All right. Up next, staying in the fluorocarbon, we've got a tactical P line, 10 pound. This is, again, it's called the Japanese fluorocarbon. And again, when on the abrasion test, we didn't notice any difference really between it and the 100% fluorocarbon.
No, we didn't notice any, but maybe here. And then again, it could be on the the clarity and how it's actually fish in the water too. But
right,
let's see how it goes on strength here. This is 5 pounds.
5 pounds, 4 ounces. This is why you should fish P line, because it instantly makes your fish gain weight. Okay,
Yeah,
you fish Sunline, it loses weight. Yeah.
If it hits 10, I'm good with it. That's a good line.
I'm perfectly okay with that. Everything else is just extra.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here goes 12 and a half.
Scale is good.
You ready? We'll start to give it weight.
Go. It was 9.6 when it popped. But
Gotcha.
again, we're talking about by the time the scale is registering, maybe it had already popped at that point there. So again, another one at the 12 and a half mark that it popped. About ready to wrap up the fluorocarbon. Now we go to the ultimate fluorocarbon by P line. So it'll be interesting to see how this one matches up with the other P line that we had, the Japanese P line.
Yep.
So,
Here comes a 5 pound weight.
scales are ready. 5 pounds, 5 ounces. That's what I'm for 10 pounds.
I just thought of something else to consider. Where'd it break at?
Looks like it broke at the line, on the loop.
Yeah, it's completely off that.
Yeah.
One thing I was getting ready to say I noticed, and I'm going to throw this out there as maybe a disclaimer. I don't know if wasn't paying attention to it as I was switching. The thing was so twisted up. Maybe it had a lot of line twist, and I don't know if it over twisted itself and torqued itself. That's something I just noticed, and I think it's worth noting. It might not have been just the line fault. Twist could have been a factor too.
Okay. All right. Last two of our fluorocarbons. We've got Cigar Invisex. This is the yellow label. We'll start off here. 5 pounds.
5 pounds. Trying it out. Here we go.
Scale's good. 5 pounds, 7 ounces. Scale zeroed. We're good. 8.14.
Did not make it.
All right, the last of the fluorocarbon, we got the Cigar red label. This is the Abrasex. This one played out pretty well during the abrasion testing. So we'll see how it does now with the actual weight testing. All right, 5 pound weight. Scale is good. By the time I said it was good, it cycled through. Okay, we're good. pounds, 3 ounces.
7.5.
Scale's good. Oh, I heard some pinging.
I'm not even done yet.
7. There we go. 7-11.
All right, get that off real quick. That
Get a
feels
little
like...
bit of guitar string there.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't want to jinx it, but I would not bet on this thing holding this 10-pound weight right now. All right.
We're ready.
All right, here we go, 10.
Did not. Interesting.
What did it say?
5-2.
After that pinging, I felt like it was just ready to break.
And I will say this too. One thing that I noticed on this one, after the second test we did, I took my hands, and this one did not break. It broke.
It might have broke with that.
It broke at the ring as well. But I took my fingers and went down the line, and you could feel it. It was a different feeling line than what it was when I first started with.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, it twists up and it changes.
All right, here we go. This is FluoroClear. This is my old trusty here. Again, we're not sponsored, but anything. This is what I've got a lot of my lines, or a lot of my rods lined up with, so we'll see how it does. So, scale is good, 5 pounds.
I'll say one thing, the stuff that we have had faith in. Do you hear that guitar string?
I heard a little guitar string early. 5 pounds, 7 ounces. Now, this is interesting because the lines that we did before this on the 5-pound weight was around 5.2, 5.3. All 3 of the P lines, the 2 fluorocarbons we did, and this one was heavier.
I don't know why.
I don't know either, but that's interesting because all 3 P lines were heavier, and they were exactly heavier.
That's really odd because you wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know the explanation. We might have to do some research on that.
$7.13.
All right, 10-pound coming up.
All right, last one we've got up. This is the old trusty for Evan here.
Trusty Rusty. So the 17-pound. So this is kind of cheating because, like I said, we went with 10-pound everything else. I didn't have a 10-pound spool. I used 17 or 14. Unless I want to get real finesse, do a 12. So that's what I got here. And so this is what I use on all my rods, a 17-pound clear. So we're going to go ahead and start this one at 10 and see where it goes.
All right, scale's good. Nine pounds, 10 ounces.
All right. Should I go to 12.5 first, you think? We've done it for everything else, so I'm just doing it 2.5-pound increments in case it doesn't make it past.
Well, and you're getting multiple stresses on it as well, so that's why we've done the same increment of the stress level.
Yeah.
Okay, scale's good.
All right, here's 12.5.
12 pounds exactly.
All right, here comes 15. Making sure you don't have scissors anywhere.
14.10. And we did have one line that made it into.
Our braids made it up in here.
Yeah, the braids. I don't think we've made it over 12.5 on any of the other lines.
No, well, this is 17, so it's kind of see where. So right now this is where it should be. If it makes this, we can classify it as quality, I guess.
Scale's good. $17.6.
Got it off there. So, I will say that feels like it's really got a lot of tension on it right now.
Yeah, it's definitely there. Now, I will say this: it doesn't feel any different. Because that's one thing I've been trying to check the line as it goes through. It doesn't feel any different than when I first tied it.
Yeah. We'll see if we can hold this. I know 20-pound coming up.
one that'll put Evan to bed happy tonight.
A lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure right now.
This one's got to hold. This is 22 and a half.
22 and a half. Come on.
One time for us, right?
Keep all sharp objects away.
Scale is good. 2014 is what it was.
20 pound, 14. You know what? I'll take it. That was with your knot. Even. I mean, you go.
All right, so we've done all of the tests. We've gotten everything onto the spreadsheets. The data is collected. Now let's break it all down. And, Coach, this is something that you and I, as we were putting the numbers together, really quickly, there were some numbers that jumped off the kind of the scale, if you will. And those final results for you a little bit, too, they're a little shocking.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about being excited to do this test, and yeah, really interested to see. It was really interesting to see the final results here. We're going to have these up here for you, but there was a lot of guys that were some shockers, and it's just goes to show, like, and it even kind of made me think too. As much I enjoyed our test, like, I'm excited to talk about here later, like the scientific method behind it of, what we could do if we were to do it again, even. You know what I mean? Because there's definitely it's amazing to see, because some of the stuff that we know is pretty good line, and it didn't test as well as some other stuff. But maybe that just shows that maybe the dollar amount on a line, or maybe the reputation of a line, maybe is kind of overrating it. And some of this other stuff, it just because we, based on our own quality test that we did, purely unbiased and going with it. So it's definitely interesting to see what's going to happen here.
All right, so the three tests that we did, again, the abrasion test, the dead weight test, and then the diameter test. And the diameter test, the numbers that we came together, you and I were kind of yin and yang on the outcome of this, because you looked at it one way, I looked at it another. And I think that you can argue both ways when you look at these numbers as we put them up on your screen, to where one side of it may look like it's good, the other side may look it's better, but there's arguments for both ways of the conversation here when you look at the diameter that is posted on the box and the actual diameter that I measured of each one of the lines.
Yeah, we looked at it, and I kind of was like fighting you on it. I said, it's got to be, and I looked at it as the smaller the diameter, the better, if it can still maintain that, pound test on the line. And you can also agree that the more diameter, as long as you're getting at least what you're paying for, and it could already make it stronger too, could make it better. So, you could look at this as the bigger diameter compared to what the box said could be a winner, or you can look at it as the smaller is the better. I looked at it as smaller, and we ended up scaling this as the smaller the diameter gave it a higher score. Yeah. But go ahead and go over how your power index worked with that.
All right, so the way this all worked out was the power index number was based off of the diameter that was the average diameter of the line. And then we put that together with the dead weight test. And each one of the steps that we tested, so like when we did the regular line, we started at 10, we went to 12 and a half, 15, and so forth. At each step, it received a point. So if it made it to 3 weights that it successfully got to, it got a ×3. And then whatever the weight was that it failed at that point was multiplied by that number and then divided by the diameter of the line. And that number produced the power index ranking. And some of these numbers, Coach, were just off the charts of how better than they were than other lines as compared to when they were in their classifications. And you look at the numbers here that we see in the monofilament, the one that really just was off the charts on the bad side of it was the original Stren. It really struggled. All of the other 3 monofilaments that we tested were all 100 or greater. Stren didn't even barely break 40.
Yeah, that was, and there's a lot of people who's going to say that old school original Stren is a great line. And I don't have a problem with using it, but for it to score that low, it's made me reconsider a lot about using just regular Stren. And then we looked at, we were talking to Brad there at Borders, how, we compared my Bass Pro stuff later, but like Stren actually makes that. And how, so it kind of makes me rethink some stuff I do with what I do in my line. But then I tested mine. We didn't do the power index, on it because it was a different scale of 17 pound, but I kind of thought it was good. But, yeah, power index was crazy. I want to, as we touch back into, the mono with that, it really scored well. I mean, the mono, 3 of the 4 lines scored over 100. And I think that shows you that really that's a pretty high quality line on the power index.
The two that shine the brightest were the 2 P lines, and the reason that we had the 2 difference there, the black light was the kind of the light the fluorescent that lights up at nighttime. The other one was the moss green, and the moss green has that dye that's injected into it that's supposed to also make this a stronger line. And when you look at the power index, it's just a little bit better. Both of these were the CXX, but this one was just a little bit better than the others.
Yeah, and it's just something cool to see how that would actually make a difference. I've never thought of it making a difference before, but obviously it does. And one thing I thought that was really stand out on this P line is, and I never realized, but you started to measure the diameters of the line. And, I kind of thought some of this was, I mean, I didn't know how much this, I thought this is a lot of extra steps here. And then you see how you look at this data, how different ones, I got my phone up here looking at it, how different diameters, parts of where we measured that were different numbers. We had some lines that were kind of a different size at different points in the spool. And these P lines were consistent throughout. And then they also had a stronger and a better power index rating. So that makes me think there's something to be said for the consistency of that line really matters. You want something that's going to be consistent all the way through. And those 2 P-line CXXs, CXX, whatever you want to call it, I guess. But they did a great job of being consistent, and that paid off with some strong line.
Without a doubt. We go to the braid. We tried 3 different models of braid and the Seagar Smackdown. This is one that I've really been thinking about switching over to and put this one up head to head with the P-Line TCB braid that I use consistently on all of my spinning outfits. And the Smackdown, it laid the Smackdown. It almost doubled up the P-Line for the overall one. Their power index was 545. The P-Line was 296. And then the Power Pro was at 286. But, I mean, the Smackdown, some of the numbers that it put up was remarkable.
Yeah, we both, as guys who have been currently, the last couple of years using that P-Line TCB braid, and for us to both kind of be, you are rooting for the stuff you use to win. You know what I mean? You kind of are subconsciously. And to see it get smacked down by the Seagar was surprising. I mean, Seagar's quality stuff, and, people talk about their braid, but that was it by far blew away the strength tests on everything, and it just had the consistency. And we talk about, whenever you feel it, there's a difference on even the feel in the line, how it seemed to it had a great feel to it, and definitely something you might want to consider looking into.
Well, I have a new box of that. I actually was given a box of that about a month ago, so probably going to be spooling up one of my new outfits with that and trying it out next to the P line and just kind of seeing how they favor each other. The one thing that we talked about too, and this was something we talked with Brad, the one thing that I don't like about the P line, the braid, it fades so quickly. And I'm kind of curious to see how the Smackdown holds up to the high sunlight in the summertime. Does it fade like the P line does as well?
Yeah, I've even used the regular just moss green P-Line, the TCB there, and it even fades pretty bad too. Now, does it make me not want to use it? It's never really made me think, oh, this stuff's not worth using. But if the Seagar stuff, that's something that I'm excited to see, and I'm probably going to get a spool of it too and put on. And if it maintains its color, that's a really big deal, because when you're using that really light line and on stuff you're letting this stuff fall weightless, etc., like you kind of want to know that extra just tick of it. And whenever you can see that line, it makes it a lot easier. So if it holds up, that's definitely something to consider. I've used the Sharpies before to kind of help it out, but if you can, that's something I'm excited to see how that holds up that test in real life action.
In the fluorocarbon, we had 7 different types of fluorocarbons that we put together. And again, it was the P line that kind of stood tall. The one that really jumped off the charts, though, the P line tactical Japanese fluorocarbon, and it was the only one of the 7 that we tested that made it over 100 in the power index. And the other 2 that were right there a close second was the P-Line 100% fluorocarbon and the Suffix Advance. Both of those were just under 94. That was the only ones that were close.
Yeah, I mean, kind of P-Line we talked about whenever you first sent me these numbers, and I looked at them. I was like, wow, P-Line looks to be the winner overall in a lot of things. And I haven't used that fluorocarbon, but that was, I mean, it blew it away and was by far the strongest. Um, I will say, I think it was definitely something to consider when you're looking into that. Well, we'll get into that. But we tried to use 7 fluorocarbons because we feel like fluorocarbons have kind of become the main, most popular line choice by a lot of anglers out there. So we want to test more options of those. And I'm sure there's other ones that you all would say, well, I want to try this, blah, blah, blah. But these are the ones we got out to try. And I think it was really surprising to me how out of them, only one of them actually did get over 100% of the power index. You know, we talked about kind of our standard for what a good line was. And if it can go over whatever it's supposed to do or do what it says it's going to do on the box, we were okay with that. We're not asking for 10-pound line to hold 30. And I'm probably sounding like I'm on repeat from what we were saying the other night at the shop when we was going over this. But, you know, that's something that P-line was able to do that in mono, and it was able to do it in fluoro. And I'm surprised it didn't do it in braid because firsthand impressions we've had of that stuff in the real world, we've not had any problems with it. Let's be honest. It's been a great line for us in real life.
And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we discussed off camera about the testing with the dead weight, because we found an element that we felt like that was probably something that allows you to get that extra advantage on the water because of the use of the fishing rod. We'll save that for whenever we get to that point. All right, over to the abrasion test. And this was something that I found really interesting because what we did is we set up the lines. We had a threaded rod that was clamped down, so we had it nice and tight. And you took the lines and literally just dragged them down that threaded rod. And it was really neat to watch the different types of lines and the sounds that they made. But the other side of thing that we notice here, and you can see with the numbers on your screen right now, that fluorocarbon died when it got into the abrasion test.
Yeah, it really struggled. I will say, I want to go ahead and put this one asterisk up there on the abrasion test. Was the very first one, the test of the trilene extra tough there. I think the first time figuring it out, I think there's probably a little bit of human error kind of caused by me on a lot of these on this test. It could be, and I will say that first one I had to get the feel for what I'm doing a little bit more. So it slipped a little bit more. It got the number up to 15, and you notice it did not score anywhere close to that after that one. So I kind of just wanted to put that asterisk on there with that one. But
and that was the reason why we decided to do 4 of these tests as well.
Yeah, we want to try to make it kind of show out. And I think as it went, the test 4 was probably the most, common of how we were doing it and the consistent as possible all the way down. But I think the point you just brought up, the sound was something that was really, really unique to each line. And it shows you, I mean, the mono had its own sound. The braid, of course, had its own sound. And that fluorocarbon, those crystals that make the fluorocarbon up, they just sound like a guitar string or something whenever you putting against that threaded line. I really don't know how that sounds on video, if you'll be able to pick that up or not on the tests you to watch. But they talked about how fluorocarbon and heat don't get along and the abrasion but it really did not get along with that metal line at all. So retie your fluorocarbon a lot.
That was something that, as we were doing the tests, I was watching through the camera, and even on that first round of all the fluorocarbons, that every one of them made it at least 2 pulls. When that first pull went across, you could instantly see the discoloration of that line where it was already starting to come apart, and you would not see that on the monofilament. And that was something that thought was really remarkable, is just even with that first pull of the the ones that held up 2, 3, even 4, you could still see that first part of that line where it went across that threaded rod, and it was already showing signs of discoloration.
Yeah, and if you had those set up on those wire clips, to go back, that first pull was able to be, I had a good, like I could keep that grip. Whenever I felt like those other two, whenever I was getting a tighter grip with one side of it, that's where we had those ones. We had it to where I was tightening it. And I don't know if that might have affected that or not, where I was pulling with one side tighter than the other. But that last one, I had it with even on both fingers again, trying to be consistent. So I think that could have affected how those numbers went on the second and third test there. That's something I've thought about. But
The one thing that I
that
really
was
liked about the way that we tested, though, is, and you just brought this point up, and this is something that I needed to really rethink again. After seeing these numbers, if I catch a decent sized fish, or I catch a fish around a piece of cover, a dock, or anything that I think that it's made contact with, as soon as that fish is either stuck in the box or easily released, I'm taking that extra 15 seconds to retie that line, because that smallest little nick across that threaded line instantly causes a weak spot in that fluorocarbon.
Yeah, that's brings back an old memory. I remember listening to this in a tournament one time. I was watching. It was an FLW tournament at Lake Hartwell. The year before that, Casey Ashley won the classic there on the little underspin, and he was skipping docks and catching money. And he talks about, he's like, I got these special docks and special brush, blah, blah. He goes, but he said, I had to have a rod per fish. He said, because he was skipping that line so far, the jig back in there so far. And whenever he hit the hook, he had 20-pound fluoro on there. And it was coming through so much of that, the docks and the metal and stuff. He goes, it was done. That line was done. I'll never use it again. It was good for one fish. And I thought, that seems extreme. But after this test, that kind of brought back that memory of listening to that, saying, there's no way I do that. He's being just extreme. He's selling spools of line, No, if it matters. I mean, because that fluorocarbon, it gets eat up alive quickly on especially metal abrasion there.
Now, on the other side of this, we'll look at the others real quickly. The FluoroClear is the stuff that I use. The XPS is what's used. The XPS 17-pound, I thought you were going to run out of weight and time to be able to pull it across that abrasion rod. That first pull, you had 40 times you went across it. And it was like, I think we were 20 or 25 in. It didn't even look like it had any line scuffs on it whatsoever.
No, it was, I mean, I got to where I was trying my hardest to find a way to break it. It was because it was getting to be a hard time. But in its, in the defense of that, it was also 17 compared to the 10-pound test. 10-pound is pretty, finesse line in my book. I mean, but your FluoroClear, though, I mean, it really, let me look at the numbers on that again. It really showed out pretty well on the overall stuff. But, I mean, still, it showed up because I think that fluorocarbon outside might have got through, but it literally was more like a mono as far as how it tested on the abrasion compared to what the straight-up P-line fluorocarbons were.
Before we head over to the dead weight, anything else you wanted to add on the abrasion test? Because I know you were the one pulling the line through. Could you tell the difference as the line started to weaken on some of those lines that you pulled through maybe 6-7 times?
I mean, get with the eyes, you could see your line fray. And we always, you always talk about checking your line. You've been told that a billion times. Check your line, make sure you feel the fray. If you feel it, definitely do it. But the biggest thing, I felt like they talk about how fluorocarbon has that lack of stretch. And to feel that fluorocarbon in my hands and going across there, it was really just a more rigid, more sensitive. And it was just kind of coming – it had a different sound. I felt like it was hitting every thread every time it crossed over. That mono with that stretch, I felt like it would kind of skip, and that kind of might have helped it go, but it would just skip over a couple threads, and it was harder because of the fact that the stretch that monofilament has. And I definitely think that kind of helped it in the abrasion test, but it doesn't help your sensitivity. You know what I mean? So that's something to consider with that too. Speaking of how stuff felt, you could tell the just the subtlety. I don't know what the right word for some of this stuff is with the line of how well you think it's going to flow and lay. I don't want my line to be super stiff to where it's going to pop off my reel. I want to lay really well in my reel. That's not going to cause backlashes and stuff like that. And we didn't have a way of testing that because that's just truly my preference on feeling it. But I know on the braids, especially, you could kind of feel the differences in each braid. And I felt like, and I've said this before and I use it, and I'm not trying to bash Power Pro, but whenever you're pulling on Power Pro, it feels truly like it's braided, if that makes sense, where the threads are there and it's all wove together. And when it starts to tear, we went over this in the dead weight test too, it like tears. It had a great footage. It tears apart and kind of rips into shreds instead of having a clean snap. So, it was just unique how that line felt compared to the other two braids. I mean, the Invisex, it was my first time holding Invisex with a BrazeX and really trying to analyze it one-on-one there of the Seaguar on the fluorocarbons. And the BrazeX was definitely a little bit stiffer line than Invisex was. And, it held up a little bit more than what the Invisex did and it kind of was the best on the abrasion test of the fluorocarbons. But you'll see how it went on other things too. But it definitely felt like it was going to do better. I mean, just by feeling it. So you could feel it, and when you're comparing 16 different line types, you start to notice subtle differences that it's hard to put into words. But get something that feels good, and I think the art of it laying right is going to be a difference there too.
Okay, over to the dead weight test, and we had to do some testing before we actually started doing the official test to make sure that we had everything squared away here. And I think that, yeah, there might have been a few other ways that we could have done this, but I think that the tests that we did were consistent. Everything that happened was exactly the setup, the same exact way. And again, maybe we could have used it smaller weights or whatever, but I think the way that it worked, it was really nice because this was a point you brought up. We were having lines that after the third test maybe wasn't reaching the weight of the line class, but at the same time, we talked about this. This was the third time that it had been put under stress of straight dead weight. And you made this point. You said this really puts into perspective of how much that rod is doing for you when you're fighting that fish, and especially when you're flipping those fish into the boat.
Yeah, the rods, you've got to let it play. If you're sticking that thing at it, and we see that a lot of times, and you think about when you're trying to pull to break your line, you always want to make sure you're not pulling it against your rod because you're going to break your rod before you're going to break your line on line. So this stuff's so strong, and this line is strong, but I think the repetitiveness of this was really impressive to me. And I heard this before talking about line. Everybody talks about how fluorocarbon doesn't stretch much, but it does get stretched due to, the heavy weight being pulled on it. Just naturally gets pulled, but it doesn't sponge back as quick as the monofilament does. And I think there's an argument, well, that's why it was kind of causing it to maybe not have the strength test, the third different test there, because it was getting just gradually stretched. And you could hear it, guitar stringing, and before it would pop. And that was something that you could kind of tell when it was going to happen. You could hear it really peaking out. And your rod, as you said, helps a lot. Your drags always help too. But I think, the repetitiveness of just dead weight on something also shows why a good keeper in the boat, snip it and retie. It's going to be a big difference.
Something that I noticed too as we went along, a lot of times after we got out of test 2 and going over to test 3, especially on the fluorocarbon, that line had a totally different feel than it did when we hooked it up the very first time on that 5-pound weight. And it was like you said, it almost kind of got stiffer as it pulled away because there was no really stretch to it, and it was coming back like that mono. Never really felt that mono. It always felt the same regardless of which line that it tested to or failed on at the next weight.
Yeah, that's a great point. How it felt different for sure. It was like it was just getting like going to I'd like to. It'd been really cool to go back and check the diameter after each test have been something cool to see now. I just thought of that. But it definitely changed its texture, and and even some of them seem to really twist all of a sudden out of nowhere. We kind of made sure to check that, but all of a sudden you look at it and it just seemed like it was getting itself twisted up, or because it was almost like unraveling in a way, which you can't tell from the video, but it was something you could tell in person and feeling it and looking at it.
All right, so looking at the dead weight test, let's start first with the monofilament. I don't think there were really any big surprises here. Maybe the Stren. Again, it was the only one that I would say in this test that underperformed. It did not pass the 10-pound weight test. It was on the 10-pound weight test. It failed at 6.3 pounds on the scale whenever it popped. The P-line, both of those made it to the 12-pound or the 12.5-pound test, broke at 13 or just a little bit above. The Trilene passed the 10-pound test. It failed on the 12.5-pound test at 11.6. And you said this a lot of times throughout the testing that night. As long as it makes it to the 10-pound test, that's all you're asking for. If you're getting anything else out of it, it's extra.
Yeah, they all performed well. The Stren left a little bit desired there. It'd been interesting to see, maybe looking back at this test, if we would have started at the 10-pound mark, how much better a lot of these numbers would have been. But I think, at the same time, you're going to be tugging on stuff a lot when you're fishing. And something I used to do a lot with mono, because I'm Mr. Mono here, and I'm throwing it out there, and I would stretch my line a little bit to kind of get the memory out of it, which after these tests, I'm probably going to just make sure I put new on every time. I think I'm done with the idea of stretching my line. That's not the best philosophy now.
On the braid, again, the Smackdown laid the Smackdown. It was the only one that made it to the actually 20-pound test. We were testing 20-pound braid, which has the same diameter of around 8-pound mono. So we made the 20-pound for the Smackdown. It was actually 24.75 when it popped. And the other two, they made it to 17.5. They both failed at 17.5 on the 25-pound weight, or the 20-pound weight. But again, the Smackdown, it really showed out.
Yeah, it definitely performed really, really well under the same circumstances as the other ones. But I will say, you remember how this test started? We really struggled. We started with P-line, I believe, didn't we, that day?
Yes.
I felt like we broke at 10. We broke it. We had a lot of, I don't think we broke at 10, we broke at 15. Like, what is going on? And we broke. So we had to really figure out, we started leaving more of a tag in, et cetera. Really, I'm still just bumfuzzled of what was happening to that line, because I've, used it in the wild per se a lot and not had problems. And it let me down over and over again. There was no reason could have been frayed. Braid's not going to cut into itself if you tie the wrong knot. Once it really come untied, it was actually breaking. I'm still at a loss for words for what happened to that, to be honest with you.
Over to the fluorocarbon, once again, the Tactical Japanese was the one that showed out. It was the only one that made it over 10 pounds on the weight. Now, it made it into the 12.5-pound test. It failed under the 15-pound test, but only the P-line Japanese, the 100% fluorocarbon, and the Suffix Advanced passed the 10-pound test. All the other ones failed at the 10-pound test.
What's really something that we talked about too with this test, I believe it was the P-line that we made the joke about. It made your fish actually weigh more, if you remember, when he was looking at the scale.
Yeah, because every time we weighed it, it was about 3 to 4 ounces heavier than the other lines.
Which doesn't make sense how or why that was happening, but for it to be doing that and then showing out as it waned, had the best dead weight test and best a lot of things, that's really something that's kind of surprising but kind of cool. But no, I think a lot of these fluorocarbons now, we use the fisherman's knot on all fluorocarbon, and a lot of people use that knot, don't have any problems, but we do talk about, I think you use a different type of a knot than what I use. I use a double San Diego jam with that. trying to make sure it doesn't cut into itself at all. And use was some type of a cinch, you said.
A
I
double
think was
cinch
what you were
knot.
trying. Yeah, yeah. And I think those are going to probably be better if we were to use that. But out of time and out of being consistent, we used the fisherman's knot, and it seemed to a lot of these failures on the dead weight test. Actually, I believe every failure was right close to the knot each and every
Yes.
time.
And that's something that we talked about as we're going through. Again, this was not a knot test. That's the next show that we're going to try to put together is we're actually going to do a knot test. And another thing we're going to try to do down the road, we're going to look at the memory of these lines too. I actually found a test right before we got ready to start with this and didn't have time to put it all together, but we're going to look at the memory of these lines and see how that tests out as well. Well, that's going to take a little bit of time to be able to get the data gathered as well. Your XPS, I thought I was going to have to get a crane out to break this stuff. It made it all the way into the upper levels. Now it was 17-pound test line because that's all you had with you, but it made it to 20.88. It was 20 pounds 14 ounces when it broke, and it kind of made you feel you were fine with what you had there whenever you started off.
Yeah, and it definitely made me feel good that at the end of the day, it did what we thought it would do. It got to the number I wanted to get to. It's not the fanciest or the cutest line, but it did what I asked it to do the whole time, and it really kind of made me very content. Which what surprised me still on this is, it's made supposedly by Stren, and then how Stren tested compared to how the Bass Pro tested. That I find that really surprising to me. Also, I think it's crazy how it tested well, but I'm trying to get at here with saying we. I should try to figure out what I was going to say with that. I completely went mind blank. So let's just act like that never happened, and we'll just move forward. It's been a long day here, and I'm gonna have to look at this guy wearing a Carolina shirt. So it's been getting rubbed in my face even more so what just happened a little bit ago. But no, I don't remember what I was going to say. To be honest with you, I was happy it went well. Your floor clear went really well too. Didn't quite get the 10-pound mark, but definitely just we want to be consistent with what we can get, and if it will hold what it says, I'm happy.
And you talk about Stren. I remember I used to use Stren when I first started fishing the circuit, and I had really good luck with it. And then it was one season I got to it, and it seemed like I was breaking off left and right, and I was done. I was like, I cannot do this. And that's when I switched to P-line, and I've been with P-line ever since.
That was the point. I'm glad you brought that up because this was an older spool of Bass Pro. This was an older spool that I had laying, and the exact point I was trying to make is I haven't bought a new spool. I just bought a bunch of bulk last time I bought it. It's 1,200 yard spools for like $10. I just bought a bunch, and I'm good for a while. I thought, well, I know my brother, he bought some of it last year, and it was just snapping like crazy. And I've heard that he said, I've heard before people saying they changed the formula on it and it went bad, goes downhill. So I'm really worried right now to test the new version of it. And after seeing what Stren's doing, that was a new package of Stren, that makes me really worried going forward with my Bass Pro. And in reverse of that, I had a horrible experience my first couple times with floor clear. And then now I'm like, that might be worth trying. This guy has a point with the floor clear.
Listen, these Carolina
over
guys,
there.
we know a little bit about something, We know a little bit about something.
I'm no comment.
All right, so we've got two different final categories that we're going to look here. So we did the final numbers just based on the category of the line. And then you wanted to put together a total test that did the numbers across everything. It was all lines put together in one. So we'll start first with the final numbers. When we put it together, we ended up with a three-way tie on the mono at the average of 2.75, and this is where we took the numbers for the diameter test, the power index, the abrasion test, and the dead weight, put them together. The better they tested, the higher number they got. So then we added all those together, divided it by the number that they had, and you see there the trilene and both P lines came out at 2.75. The Stren was at 2. But when you look at the four categories that we compared against, and those three almost one full number higher than the trend. It kind of shows out maybe that where the head of the class is in the ones that we tested.
Yeah, and they were definitely above the trend. I think the consistency, a lot of that. I mean, I would be happy to use three of those four lines. After saying that, I'd probably want to shy away a little bit from what that trend was, but it's surprising. I kind of hate to bash it because it's something I used to really like and use, and maybe we just tested it the wrong way, but it definitely did not show out how we expected it to, or the tradition, or the kind of reputation it has to kind of did not get upheld by what we did. But maybe we're the bad guys, so who
Yeah,
knows?
who knows? On the braid, the SmackDown, it was a clear-cut winner. It outperformed the P-line braid by a half a point. The Power Pro was nowhere close, but the SmackDown across the board, the only one that it did not take top honors was under the abrasion test, which the P-line did, but everything else, it was a SmackDown, and it was pretty much a landslide in some of those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like we thought as we were testing, by the time we got done doing the dead weight test, that we knew that we want to try this CR SmackDown. Again, something I want to throw out. We didn't test it, but Brad mentioned that P-Line's come up with a new spinning reel braided line that something I'm going to want to try out later on, especially how P-Line tested everything else. But no, that cigar really performed great in every single facet. I just can't wait to see if the color holds up. So that's the next step.
Fluorocarbon, this was something we were kind of curious about because we did the tactical P-line fluorocarbon, which is the Japanese fluorocarbon, and then we had the 100% fluorocarbon. I don't want to call it American, it just says 100% fluorocarbon. But those were first and second in the fluorocarbon. But the tactical was one full point ahead of the 100% fluorocarbon. And again, these were the exact same weight from the same manufacturer, but it has to make you wonder, does that word tactical really mean something?
Well, I know when I see the advertisements, you see that tactical advertise. Scott Martin, who just won the first Open today. You know, that's something that he talks about is his tactical forecourt. Now, I'm sure down there in Florida, he was using mainly braid just now. But anyway, it's something that is, it surprising how the same manufacturer, why, I don't know, to me, and you can maybe explain this, but why to me as a manufacturer, why are you making two different types of line and you're making this one better than the other one? Like, what? I want people to know, whatever my name's on, I want to be the best what I do. I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me, but no, it definitely it was different. It was way better.
And that goes to the
I
same
would think,
conversation there with Seagar. You've got the Invisex and
yeah.
the Abrazex, and neither one of them were at the top of the field. You had Abrazex that was sixth out of the seven. Invisex was fourth. You had the Suffix Advanced that was third. I've actually used that line as well before and had good luck with it. The Trilene Super Abrasion Resistance, it was last, and then the Sunline was fifth.
Yeah, I mean, when I go to fluorocarbon, I told you I do use Sunline Sniper. That's what and I haven't had a reason to say I want to stop using it either. So I will say I might have some reason to try something new. I'll say that much. But Sunline has not hurt me at all. It actually kind of got my confidence back into using fluorocarbons. But I guess the diameter test is really kind of what got it kicked down. But other than that, it was pretty consistent throughout. The power one, the power index there of the Brazex was really poor. The dead weight just didn't handle, but it did have the abrasion. Doesn't make sense to me how it could handle abrasion, be the very best floor on abrasion, but not actually have strength. That's something that really, at least for us, again, I'm sure how these manufacturers test their line is way different than how Evan and James test the line. But this is something we did, and it's kind of seems to be consistently, on what we've had personal experience with to an extent.
All right, the last one that we've got here on your screen, this was the total test. So, Evan, you put this together, and I'll let you really break this down. But this is, regardless of classifications, this were all 14 of the lines that we tested, all put together in one category to see how they come out. And again, 1, 2, and 3 was no shocker. But after that, that was where some kind of maybe eyebrowsing raising happened.
Yes, I think that I was wanting to see, what is the best line? Is it worth to pay the extra? I mean, because what is the MSRP on the 100 the P line tactical fluorocarbon? I think it's $23 a spool or something like that.
Something like that.
Just about for a 200-yard spool. Then I'm like, well, I know Trilane XT is not that. P line, CXX is not that. Like, where does this stuff rank? Fluor Clear is not that. You can look at these different things. I wanted to see where you get the most bang for your buck. I didn't compare it to price tag. I just wanted to look at what the best was from our test. So I rated them all. Now, to make it, the diameter was self-explanatory on the size. Abrasion was straight ahead on what we did with just scraping it. But the dead weight, we did, and this could have a little bit of error to it, but whenever it would break, we had the scale there, and James was holding it. As it would break, whenever he'd write call it the number he saw it get to before it broke. So, the ones that all failed, say at the 10-pound test, I charted these rankings based off of, that number of what we saw on the scale. So there could be a little bit of, I don't know how accurate some of that is per se. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't read it right, but I'm saying on how this goes. So that's how I scaled it out here. Again, no surprise and arguably unfair that 3 20-pound braids are the best on a 10-pound other line test. So I still rated them first, second, and third, but I'm going to go ahead and kick those out of the test now after they were first, second, and third. And then I'm going to go ahead. My Excel did really well, but again, it's 17-pound. I'm picking it out too. The best line that we had with all these tests was actually this guy's favorite that he currently uses on his everyday line is the P-Line Fluoro Clear. You look at that, it was, it didn't win anything except for the most consistent throughout. It had the, scored 10th best on the diameter, 11th on the abrasion, 7th on the dead weight, and just came in there with a happy fourth place overall finish and kind of won the 10-pound line test overall that day. Then you go back, and what was unique to me was beyond that, except for strand, we go from a copolymer to 3 monos with P-Line, the Blacklight CXX, then the Trilene Extra Tough, and then the Moss Green as the next one behind that. So it was, I kind of make the joke about I do use mono and stuff, but it was really unique with how we scaled this, that actually a copolymer was one, 3 monos were the next before we start getting into the different lines of the fluorocarbons.
And I think that you look at, again, and we talked about this a lot while we were going through the show, depending on the type of water that you're fishing is obviously going to dictate the type of line that you're working with. But I think it shows, again, with the Fluoro Clear, that if you're looking for something that gives you the best of both worlds, the fluorocarbon and the strength of the mono, that Fluoro Clear really steps up and does the best with that copolymer. But on the backside of that, if I'm fishing open water, super clear water, I like that fluorocarbon just because I know that I'm going to get more sensitivity. I'm going to be able to see those longer casts. I'm going to get better, I guess, performance out of that I may have gotten out of something with mono.
Yeah, I'll tell you a specific reason why I'm always going to go with a fluoro. And you still see, I should have mentioned this. There was a 7th place tie actually, which ends up being 4th of fluorocarbon. So that was Fluoro Clear. Sorry. Then we had the other 2. So really, it was 4th place. It tied for 4th was the P-Line Moss Green and the P-Line Tactical. So I don't want to kind of bash fluoro that much because, like I said, there's one. If I'm throwing a wacky rig or trying to throw something to get to sink faster, that fluorocarbon as it sinks, I definitely always want to use it that way. And that's just a simple one way I definitely make the switch to. I want something that's going to let that weightless worm sink at a faster rate and a more true rate instead of having that bow up in the line. It's going to be sinking downward, and it's going to have a better hook set. I believe that way too.
Well, after we've completed the test, we put a lot of work into this. I think we spent almost 3.5 hours at the shop doing all of this, gathering all these numbers. We spent probably a couple of hours putting the numbers together and breaking everything down. What's your final thoughts on how this turned out?
Eye-opening. I want to do it again, actually, if that makes sense. With hopefully a little bit more time and a little bit more planning on some stuff. But I think it was what I mean by doing it again is I want to see, I just, as a guy who really values consistency, I want to see how much everything holds up. And then, I like to see how long, if we came back and did this after using these lines for a week, what would happen, how good are they? How long are they still good for you on things? You talk about the different tests of memory. That's going to be some stuff to kind of add to this. It's going to make it fun as we go and continue on here. But it made me really, above all, make sure you have, as we talked about last week, the right rod in your hand. If you have the right rod as you're fighting your fish, you're going to be a lot happier guy at the end of the day.
The one thing that really intrigues me about the next time we get a chance to do this is I want to measure that line after the break. And I want to see the difference of that diameter, especially on some of those lines that do stretch and don't stretch, and see if there's a really significant change after the dead weight test. I really like the dead weight test. I've watched several of these type of tests on YouTube, and they've got this contraption to where they put it on like a vise and it spins it and it pulls and it consistently pulls. But you think about the way that fishermen, we're not consistently pulling something like this. We're tugging and yanking and pulling and throughout the day, all the different stuff that we're doing. And I feel like that the dead weight test gave you more of a realistic type of data that you're going to see in the real world rather than manufacturing something on a desktop that's just pulling it apart until it pops.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because when does your line break when you fish? It breaks on the hook set, or if it's being sawed around, if it's actually being sawed around some type of, covering or a tree or a dock or whatever. Very rarely, but the other place it could possibly break is, that last surge with very little line out near the boat when you're trying to get it in the boat. So, it's rarely just going to break. We're not saltwater guys of sitting here fighting, a marlin for, hours, just sitting there reeling and holding pressure to it. These bass that we're going after, it's definitely not going to be a steady pressure. It's got highs and lows throughout the fight. We want to keep tension to it, but we're not getting those high numbers of tension and steadily growing tension. It comes and goes a lot throughout the fight and throughout the cast every time.
Well, as we've said through the entire process of this, again, we are not endorsed by any of these line companies. If there's any of these line companies that would like to send us stuff to do more tests, we would certainly take that without a doubt. And we're not here to tell you this line is better than the other. Take the data as you will. I know that we can say that physically having the data in our hands with the stuff that we tested, it gives us enough to where we can make an educated decision on what we feel like is the best that works for us. And certainly we hope that you can do the same. And that's the whole reason we took the time to do this. And yeah, this has been a lengthy show, but I think it's been well worth it because there was some things in there that we totally expected to see, and we saw something totally opposite.
Yeah, and as you go into that, we're not trying to say, your line for these companies are not good. We're not endorsed by anybody. I'm not getting paid to put down String Original. I wish it was turned. I wish it tested better, to be honest with you, because, but it didn't. So it is what it is. We're going to just what our results were is what it is. One thing I want to add to what you said, the test. We're going to do this knot and test our knots and stuff. But finally, I want to also say, it would be nice to see, because we had so much issues where the knot was at, we tried to find a way to not test the knot at all, but it still ended up being a lot of the area where this was failing. So There's some things with the dead weight test that would be interesting to see if we found the best knot and tied it perfectly on each of them, due to time constraints of trying to figure out and just being consistent for everybody, because not everybody's tying these fancy knots. There's nothing wrong with a fisherman's knot, and that's what we went with. It's kind of consistent for a lot of people.
Well, weather in, I think, a lot of the United States is going to really show out these next 2 weeks into February. And I know in our area, we're looking at high 50s, even up into the mid 60s for about the next 10 days or so. I think the water's calling pretty soon. We're going to have to get out, and this is one of those surges in February where those fish may pull up a little bit. You may get some of those warmer days, find some of those banks that's covered in rock. You might find some of those big females that start trying to push in and do a little thing crazy that we usually don't start seeing until about March.
Yeah, this we might be done talking about wintertime fishing, starting to actually have some real fun coming along here soon. Looking forward to it. And I know the groundhog said spring's already started, so let's just go ahead and go with his philosophy, and this ready to start fishing.
Yeah, and I'm not going to throw the disclaimer out there of how frequent that he has been correct, but I'm going with what he's got because I'm ready for spring. I want springtime out there, and I'm ready to get those power baits out. I've got several custom baits that I've been working on. I've got some really good looking colors that I put together for some crankbaits, square bills. Of course, Talk is one of my favorite guys to watch on the circuit, and anytime I think of a square bill, I think about Talk and what he does with a square bill. So I'm excited to get these out there, and of course, that's when you start talking about when those fish start pulling up shallow.
It will not be long.
Without a doubt. Well, before we wrap things up here, let's, again, if you're first time here with us, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit that bell. We'll put that alert out there each time that we have new material. And, of course, there's all of our social media stuff at Casting with the Coaches. He's on Twitter at CoachEferg12. I'm at Collier SC Live. There's the email address as well that you can send us comments, send us pictures of your catches. And on your screen there, we added our Instagrams. He's Evan_C_Ferguson. I'm James_Collier_fishing. That's where you can find us on Insta. We're putting a lot of stuff out there as well. And we'll have a lot of stuff coming up once we start getting out on the water and getting a lot of fish stuff going from there.
Yep, give us the follow. Definitely on this episode, tell us what you think about what your lines are, what your favorite line choice is. If we open up any of your eyes, or if you say we're just dead wrong. But we did a test, so at least the test could be valid in our book, at least anyway.
Without a doubt. Before we wrap it up, we got to say a big thank you to Brad and Border Sporting Goods for getting us all the line that we used to test with, staying open so that we could use this shop there. You could see a lot of the stuff there in the test videos. Again, if you're in this local area and you're looking for any of your stuff that you need for your fishing needs, go see Brad and the gang out there at Border Sporting Goods. They've got their open house coming up February 16th and 17th. They've got a lot of specials that's going to be going on there. Stop by, see them, stock up. They'll get you all squared away.
Yes, for sure. Get over there, and they'll get you set up on whatever you need.
Guys, that's going to do it for this show. Again, it's been a long one, but I think it's been well worth it. It's certainly one that we put a lot of time into, and we certainly hope that you feel like that the information that we were able to provide here was very beneficial. Coach, have a great rest of your week. Looking forward to doing some knots with you. I know you've got some funny ones that you want to show me. I've got some I want to show you as well, and hopefully it's going to be another interesting show.
Looking forward to it, buddy.
For Coach Evan Ferguson, I'm James Collier. This has been Casting with the Coaches, presented by Border Sporting Goods. We'll see you next week right here on YouTube.
Spring fishing season is just around the corner, and Borders Sporting Goods is your fishing headquarters for rods and reels from G. Loomis, St. Croix, Fenwick, Lewes, Daiwa, Shimano, and Abu Garcia. No matter what species of fish you are targeting, Borders has the perfect setup to make your next trip on the water a success. Borders has baits in every style and size with a wide selection of tackle from Berkley, Strike King, Zoom, Z-Man, Bandit, and many more. Before hitting the water for your next fishing trip, stop by and stock up at Borders Sporting Goods, US 60 West in Ashland.